Hey guys, welcome back. For those of you that are new here, my name is Kobe and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing part 1 of a 3-part series all about syngoniums. Part 1 will be the care guide of syngoniums, part 2 will be propagation, and part 3 will be a follow-up on those propagations because I am going to be routing them in different types of media, so I want to share and discuss with you guys the results of those propagations. So I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so I'm hoping that today's video is going to be a quick one, so I'm just going to dive straight into it. Okay, so syngonium soil requirements. Now, with syngoniums being aeroids, I first assumed that they're going to need a super chunky, super fast draining soil mix, and I was slightly wrong when it came to that. Syngoniums are extremely fast, vigorous growers. They push out new growth throughout the year. Even in my winter months, my syngonium still managed to push out new growth. So I needed a soil to cater for that fast and vigorous growth. And that's when I reverted back to my general potting soil mix recipe that has good aeration, good drainage, but still holds in quite a lot of moisture. So I have done a video about my general potting soil mix recipe, which I will leave a link in the description below, and you guys can check that out. But yeah, I generally use that soil mix for my syngoniums, and it's quite a good soil mix. It caters for all their needs, and they seem to be loving that. Okay, so watering your syngoniums. Now, generally speaking, I don't like to tell people to water their syngoniums or any plants on a schedule because that isn't the right way to do it. Watering your plants, there's different factors that involve how frequent you water your plants. For example, the size of your plant, the type of plant. There's also different types of pots will also affect how often or how frequent you water your plants, even where you place your plants, if it's high light, low light. There's a lot of different factors, and I've gone more into detail in that in a different video on how to water your indoor plants, and I'll leave a link in the description for that video as well, and you guys can check that out. But generally speaking, with my syngoniums, I water my syngoniums at least once a week in the summer months and once every 2 weeks in the winter months. The syngoniums that I keep outdoors, I water from the top. I do top watering with them. And the syngoniums, or most of my plants that I keep indoors, I prefer bottom watering. So I'll just take out this pot right here and I'll place it in a bath of water. Leave it for maybe about 20 minutes to a few hours, just depending on how saturated I want the soil to get. And once I feel that it's heavy enough, then I'll just take it out. I'll tilt it in a 45-degree angle and let the excess water drain out from the bottom. Just give it a good swaying motion and then you'll find all the water just draining out. And then I place it on a microfiber cloth for at least 10 minutes just to drain out any excess moisture from the soil. And then they're good to go. But as I said, it all depends on the syngonium that you have. I would stick my finger in at least till my second knuckle into the soil to see if there's any moisture. If you feel any moisture, then the plant is good to go. But if the soil is dry, then give it a good soaking or good watering and they should be fine. Okay, so I think that sums up for watering your syngoniums. Next, let's talk about lighting. Okay, so lighting for your syngoniums. Now, when it comes to my syngoniums, I did do a little experiment with the intensity of light that they require. Now, I've noticed a lot of the time that syngoniums growing outside in people's gardens, and they seem to be doing quite fine in full sun. So I assume that full sun will probably just make my syngoniums grow much more faster, but I was very, very wrong. And how I knew I was wrong when it came to these two guys, the Syngonium neon and the Albo maculata. Now, the lighting requirements for syngoniums, I would say bright indirect light is the best lighting for your syngoniums. And if you put these plants in direct light or in too bright of a light situation, they do start reverting back to the green form. As you can see, I placed the syngonium close to the window and it was getting direct sunlight and one of the leaves were reverting. And I noticed that a few other leaves reverted, and I just cut that out. And even with the neon syngonium, if you look right here, you can see that it has a lot of pink on it right now. But when I put it in direct sunlight, the leaves started losing the pink coloration and started reverting back to a more green. As you can see, the older leaves right here were getting less of pink and getting more green on the leaves. So when I pulled it back maybe about a meter and a half, 2 meters away from the window, they started pushing out new growth that had a lot more pink in it. And if you guys can see with this syngonium right here, this alba maculata, all the new growth is now becoming variegated. So I wouldn't advise putting your syngoniums in direct sunlight or in too low light of a situation. Certain syngoniums can handle low light situations, but I would say the best lighting situation for your syngoniums is bright indirect sunlight. Or even if you place it next to a window and if you have a sheer curtain in front of that, that is perfect for syngoniums. I keep most of my syngoniums about either, if I don't have a sheer curtain in front of my window, I keep them maybe about a meter and a half, 2 meters away from the window. If I do have a sheer curtain in front of it, then I just place it directly in there. Some of my other syngoniums I keep outside, and they are under my roof eaves, so they don't get any direct sunlight, but they get very bright indirect light, and they seem to be loving it and pushing out a lot of new growth. Okay, so fertilizing your syngoniums. Now, generally, I don't like using liquid fertilizers for any of my plants, and that's for a few different reasons. One of them being is that I fear overdosing my plants with liquid fertilizer and burning the roots and inviting root rot. And I don't want root rot in my plants because most of the time when I get root rot, the plants either don't survive or they take quite a long time to bounce back. And the other reason why I don't like using liquid fertilizer is that most liquid fertilizers stink like rotten fish. And I used to use some of the liquid fertilizers about 2 years ago, and my entire house used to smell like rotting fish. And I just don't want my house to smell like that, whether it be for a week, a day, or even an hour. It's nasty. It's not nice at all. So what I use nowadays is a slow release or controlled release fertilizer, something like your Osmocote granules. This is Osmocote Pro Release 12 to 14 month. And how you use these fertilizers is that you just take a little bit of this and sprinkle it over the top of your soil and mix it into the first 2 to 5 centimeters of the soil. And your plant will be good for the next 12 to 14 months. And I've noticed really, really amazing results with using Osmocote or even Multicote, which is, I think Multicote is a much more readily available fertilizer in South Africa. Osmocote is a bit harder to get your hands on, but if you can get your hands on Osmocote, I highly recommend you get that for your plants because I've noticed amazing results with Osmocote. And how Osmocote generally works is that it works with your seasons. On the colder seasons in your winter and autumn months, it releases nutrients much more slower because your plant pushes out much less growth in those months. And in your spring, summer months, because it starts getting warmer, it starts releasing more of the nutrients to cater for the fast, vigorous growth of your plant. So I really, really like Osmocote slow release fertilizers for my indoor plants. Okay, so let's talk about syngonium maintenance. Now, when I talk about maintenance of your syngoniums, I'm talking about any dried leaves or dried edges and tips. And if you look here, these syngoniums have some dried edges. What you can do is you can just take a sterilized scissor and just cut that tip off like that, and it's good to go. Generally, I don't cut off any dried edges or dried tips on my syngoniums because they push out a lot of new growth. So I just wait for them to yellow or dry completely, and then I just remove it from the bottom. And I'll demonstrate that to you guys with this leaf right here. It's still got a lot of green on it, still is good for probably the next 2 to 3 weeks or maybe a month before I remove this, but I just want to show you guys how you can remove the stems. All you do is you just bend this down and it just breaks off like that. It's that simple to remove your dying leaves of your syngonium. And yeah, that's about it with syngoniums for your maintenance part. And what you also want to do is any dried leaves, you want to remove that there. As you can see, there's some dried leaves here. And you just pull it out and it comes out like that. And why you want to remove those dried leaves or rotting foliage is that you just don't want to invite any type of pests to start latching on to syngoniums, because syngoniums kind of attract a lot of different pests. Okay, so that brings me to my next topic with your syngoniums is pest control. Now, the main bugs that I generally see on my syngoniums is mealybugs and aphids, and that can easily be controlled with just washing your plant leaves down and rubbing them, and then power hosing them with a shower hose, not too strong, just strong enough to wash away any of the bugs and debris that's on the leaves. And then after, I just spray it down with some neem oil mixed with sunlight liquid and water, and that does the trick for me. But what I've also started noticing this season around is that some of my syngoniums started getting thrips. And thrips is a very, very ferocious pest to have on your plants. Generally, when you notice the thrips, it's already too late to save some of the leaves, because they kind of just attack the leaves crazy. And what you'll notice is that some of your leaves will start turning yellow and will have brown spots on them. And I think the brown spots are just caused by the waste that the thrips leave behind. And the mother plant of my Syngonium albumaculata got hit with thrips about 2 or 3 weeks back. And what I did with that is I did almost the same thing, is wash the leaves down, rub the leaves with your fingers, and then power hose it down, and then treat it with some neem oil and sunlight liquid. And then I also treat it once every 3 days with your horticultural oil, something like Orchex. And that seems to be doing the trick for me. But generally with pest control, you want to spray down your plants with neem oil, a neem oil solution at least once every 2 weeks as a maintenance and precautionary measure. And that should do the trick. With me having so much of plants and so much going on, I kind of sometimes forget to treat some of my plants, and that's when I notice that they get hit with some of the pests. Not all of us can be on top of everything at the same time. So yeah, but when I am hit with bugs, that's the process that I do, is just a spray down and treatment with horticultural oil or neem oil spray, and that does the trick. Okay, so next, let's talk about when to repot your Syngoniums. Now, this 3 King Syngonium that I got right here, I received about a year ago as a 3 or 4 leaf cutting. And since then, it's grown into this big, beautiful beast right here. And I've already repotted this plant at least twice in the last year. And if you notice at the bottom, you'll see that there's roots already busting out the bottom of the pot. And that's a good indication that this guy needs to be repotted quite soon. So when you repot your Syngonium, look at the bottom of the pot. If you notice that there's roots bursting out the bottom of your pot, then that's a good indication that you're going to need to repot your Syngonium. And when you do repot your Syngonium, you want to go up just a size or 2 bigger. So example is, I got the Syngonium in a 15 centimeter pot. And if I had to repot this plant, I'm going to go to the next size, which is a 17 centimeter pot. You don't want to go too large with the pot sizes with Syngoniums or any of your plants. That's just going to encourage a lot of moisture to be held in your soil for far too long, and that's just going to encourage bacterial growth, and that's going to cause root rot in your plants. So just go up a size or 2 bigger when you're repotting some of your plants. Okay, so next let's talk about propagating your Syngoniums. Okay, so I think that's about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button at the bottom. And until next week, cheers guys.